Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this program. Today's first session is about practicing creative and critical thinking. So, if we look at the topic of this program, it is exploring the dimensions of innovation and incubation. Creative and critical thinking is imperative, it is a must for innovation and incubation. And probably that's the reason why we are starting this program with practicing creative and critical thinking. As we start, I want to thank the management of the Institute to give me an opportunity to present in front of all of you. And I also want to thank the organizers to create this particular environment, the online environment, so that so many of us can connect and participate in such a short notice. So with this, let's get into the topic. And as we get into the topic, let me quickly introduce myself and then we will start the our today's topic, and that is creative and critical thinking. So my name is Gaurish Borkar. Probably you all know me now. I have more than 20 years of industry experience, mainly in IT and training. Currently, I'm managing director and founder of Netrutva Training and Consulting Private Limited. I have worked in MNCs like Microsoft, Nvidia, BMC Software on many at various capacities and many global initiatives. Along with many other credentials, I'm also a NLP master practitioner. Researching scientific aspects of Vedic culture is my hobby, and I have authored 13 books on Vedic math, Vedic culture, and Vedic astrology. All these books are available on Amazon. If you have interest in any of these topics, feel free to search them on Amazon and go through them as well. So with very less introduction, let's go to the topic, today's topic. So as we start, I want to tell you three stories, and these three stories we are going to connect throughout this session. So the first story is about these kids, the kids that you are seeing on the right. These kids are from a village near Nasik, Maharashtra, and what they have built is a cannon, a small cannon to scare monkeys. I work with these kids. So their challenge is various times during the year, their field is attacked by monkeys. And then they have applied many different solutions to scare these monkeys. In the beginning, they used to beat the drums. Then after that, they started firing firecrackers. And monkeys is an intelligent species. So what they do is they learn from whatever practices are applied. And once you apply that practice, after that, once they know that it doesn't harm them, they just stop scaring to that particular method. So these kids decided to build something new and different, and they came up with this small gadget. This gadget, I'll just show you the gadget first and then explain what it is. They are explaining what they have done. It is in Marathi, so I'm going to explain it to you after the video. So what they have done is they took two pieces of pipes available in their field. They bought a gas lighter and sealed the gas lighter to the pipe, and they are using pesticide or insecticide as a fuel. They are lighting that fuel, they are spraying the fuel inside the pipe, lighting it with the help of the lighter. And once it gets ignited, they have a ball, a plastic ball, which is kept at the uh, face, the mouth of the cannon, and it just gets blown. The range of this small cannon is around 70 feet, and that's good enough for them to scare the monkeys. Now, why monkeys get scared and this is an effective solution is because monkeys don't know from where the ball is coming towards them, and that's why they always get scared no matter what, because they haven't really figured out how the ball is being thrown at them or how the balls are attacking them. So this is a trick that has really worked well in their fields. Interesting, isn't it? The other story that I wanted to tell you is from IIT Gandhinagar Republic Parade Republic Day function of 2020. This year, I got an opportunity to attend this function and an opportunity to hear Professor Sudhir Jain, who also he is a director of IIT Gandhinagar, and he also received Padma Shri Award for his work this year. So what he told to his staff and the students was very interesting. And we have to remember that he is a director of IIT, one of the IITs. And what he told is if we follow other IITs, then we are going to reach to the same level where all other IITs are. If we want to do and reach to some different level, then we need to do things differently. And that's very important. So what he mentioned is he would want everybody to do things differently to reach to a new and a different height, even at that level where the IITs are. And that's very important for all of us. We all are faculties and we all can look at his message in a particular perspective, take it in a particular perspective, and see what we all can do to make sure that wherever we are, we can take our institute to the next level where it is supposed to be. The third story is from a movie, Three Idiots. You all know this movie, Three Idiots, and you probably also remember Joy Lobo, who attempted to create a drone with some special facilities. And we are going to connect all these three stories as we go through the presentation and the session, and then see how it makes sense for all of us with the realm of creative and critical thinking. Now, as we delve into this topic, let's see times when thinking of giants, thinking of experts, thinking of people, CEOs, people, experts in business community failed. Thomas Watson, the president of IBM, said in 1943 that I think there is a world market for maybe 5 computers. Isn't it interesting what he thought? There is a world market only for 5 computers. Daryl Zanuck, executive at 20th Century Fox in 1946, what he mentioned is very interesting. What he said is television won't be able to hold on any market it captures after first 6 months. People will soon get tired of staring at a plywood box every night. And we all know how television is popular today. So what he thought, what he felt, what he understood didn't hold true in the longer run. Robert Metcalfe, the founder of 3Com, mentioned in 1995, that is the time when the internet was just becoming popular. What he said is almost all of the many predictions now being made about 1996 hinge on the internet's continuing exponential growth. But I predict the internet will soon go spectacularly supernova and in 1996 catastrophically collapse. So in 1995, he predicted that the internet would collapse in 1996. And we know where today internet is. We all know where today the whole industry around internet is. Let's also look at what the corporates thought about various situations and how they responded and reacted to various situations. So Chester Carlson, the inventor of photocopying machine, was turned down by over 20 companies, including IBM and General Electric. Neither of them believed that there was a significant market for copiers. And today we know that the photocopying machines are called Xerox, right? So Xerox is the name of the company who actually popularized these photocopying machines. And no more they are called photocopying machines, they are called Xerox. And that is how it was needed and it was popularized and popular. Similarly, we can say Microsoft missed internet and mobile, both the waves. These are few of important names, and Microsoft kind of missed it, and that's really surprising. Today, many corporations are predicting about machine learning, and the time will tell us more about who was correct and who was not. However, for all of us as learners, it's important to look at everything with a very open mind and then see and learn from the situation. Now, you would wonder all these big shots, all these big corporations, why do you think they failed? So let's look at common thinking failures and then understand about it. So many times people fail to look at something that is important. Whenever a situation is presented, it has many details and it also has many aspects. Many times people fail to look at something that is important and that causes the thinking failure. People see only a part of the situation. This is another reason. Sometimes people just see a part of the situation. They don't look at the big picture. They don't look at the situation holistically. And that is another reason why thinking fails. Another reason why thinking fails is there are things which are left out of their situation and we think about it. It's not always that we look at each and every aspect, and that's why certain things are ignored, certain things are known but ignored because they are felt that they are not so important. And that is another reason why thinking fails. Hello, I'm back. My apologies. I had some internet connectivity issues, so I was disconnected from the meeting. So I'm now continue from where we left before I got disconnected. So one of the key reasons why we fail is because we fail to generate alternatives. It's extremely important for all of us to find right alternatives before we select a particular alternative. And if we are just generating alternatives, we are not generating alternatives, then that naturally creates a challenge because we are working, we are living in limited alternatives. And the limited alternatives is a challenge for all of us, and that is because we are going to always select whatever is available to us. And this is the last but one of the most important thinking failures. Now, let's also understand why. Let's understand how we think and how we make decisions. So, we make decisions based on our nature. This is one of the first very basic way, and that is basically based on our genes or a genetic self that we have. Then, based on our past experiences, we make decisions based on our past experiences. Now, this is another interesting aspect because this is related to our upbringing. The third one, the third uh, factor on which we build or make decisions is based on our company, the people with whom we live, the people along with we work. Based on what they tell, what information that we get, we make decisions based on that. Now, this is a very interesting scenario. For example, in this particular situation, we can also look at internet as one of our component in our company because we just go to it, Google all the time and then look for an answer. And nowadays, doctors crack jokes that we, our patients, know more than us about the diseases that they have. And that's because most of the time, no matter what it is, first thing when we get to know about something, we go on internet and search and read about it. Even then that is the case, we still go to the expert, we still go to the doctors and take their opinions. So we also make decisions based on the guidance from experts. In this particular case, like I explained, it is about the doctors. In this example, it is doctors. We make decisions based on the influence from the environment, or what is also called as herd mentality. Because everybody is doing it, I'm also going to do something. Or because everyone wants to do something, everyone wants to do engineering, everyone wants to go to medical, everyone wants to go to the US, everyone wants to do higher studies, and so on and so forth. So in general, what most of the people around us do, we think and start thinking that that is the right approach, and we generally prefer to choose that as one of the safest approach because it is a tried and tested path. One key factor that impacts our decision making is our mood. If we are in a good mood, then the kind of decisions that we make would be different when we are not in so much mood. And mostly when we are not in so much good mood, it's possible that we think that we are limited by the choices. And most of the times, this is very important, most of the times when we think that we are limited with the choices, that means that there is a very high possibility that we are going to make probably a subsidiary or a wrong decision. And that's why it is very important to have a choice with us before making a decision. And this is a very important aspect of decision making. Now, we learned about how we make decisions. We also learned about uh, the causes why the decisions fail, why thinking fails. And with this background, I want to ask you an interesting question. And the question is from a very basic arithmetic, and that is, can you show numbers up to 100 using our 10 fingers? Now, when I ask you this question, maybe a few options or a few answers would come to your mind. One of that would be no. The other might be I don't know. The third might be, yeah, probably, yes, I know. And people who know the answer of this question would say, yes, I know the answer. Some of you might have some answer which is out of these four choices. And it's possible that you may have some different answer, but such people would be very less as compared to people who fall into these four answers. No, I don't know, probably yes, and yes, isn't it? So let's hold on to this answer and then we will move forward. I'm going to come back to this question after we learn a little bit about creative and critical thinking and look at the same question from a different perspective. Okay. So this method, the way we decided to answer this question is just a flavor of something called as critical thinking. People want to reach to conclusion as soon as possible in critical thinking. So many a times when we rush towards the conclusion, there is a possibility, there is a very high possibility that we are using the methods of critical thinking. And this method is very good to select a choice out of available choices. However, when we want to come up with new choices, when we want to change the paradigm, when we want to do new and different things, this method of critical thinking is not so effective or it is ineffective. So let's understand the difference between creative and critical thinking, and then we go back to the question that we had. Okay. So creative thinking attempts to create something new or different, whereas critical thinking seeks to assess or validate something that exists. I want to tell you one thing while explaining this, and that is many people take different approach to creative and critical thinking, and that's why the way I'm presenting here, creative and versus critical thinking, may not be exactly same as some other people present. However, I wanted to kind of make a clear-cut difference between creative and critical thinking, and that is the reason why I'm comparing it one against other. There are some thoughts, some school of thoughts who think all this together is critical thinking. However, that is also one of the ways to look at it. However, the way we look at it is creative versus critical thinking, because that way we can make appropriate choice based on the situation. Okay. So creative thinking is generative. It helps us to generate something. Critical thinking is mostly analytical. Creative thinking is divergent by design. It doesn't let us conclude things quickly. It opens new options. It opens new opportunities. It gives us more choices. Critical thinking is helpful to conclude. Creative thinking is focused on possibilities, more and more possibilities. Like I told you, critical thinking is based on probabilities. So probabilities also help us to rate available solutions and pick the most probable solution and so on and so forth. Similarly, the creative thinking disregards accepted principles. It prefers not to go along with accepted principles. It would challenge or take a different path. Critical thinking by nature applies accepted principles and moves forward with the help of accepted principles. Now let's look at the qualities of creative and critical thinking. Creative thinking, one of the quality of creative thinking is a possibility, and one of the quality of critical thinking is analytical. Creative thinking by design is innovative, and critical thinking prefers to maintain the status quo. Now, when I talk about a status quo, it doesn't mean that it's bad or it's something that shall not be done, because there are organizations where the KPIs are really, really high. For example, in a data center, their KPIs are generally, the uptime KPI is generally 99.999%. And when the KPI is 99.999%, even if you meet it all the time, you are doing really, really great. So maintaining that KPI or maintaining the status quo in those scenarios is really good. So it doesn't really mean that maintaining status quo is bad. It depends on the bar that we have set, and it depends on the achievements that we want to make. And that's why what I just want to tell you is critical thinking helps us to maintain status quo. It doesn't mean it is not good. Creative thinking is by design risk taking, and critical thinking is by design process focus, because we want to make things work, we want to move forward in a particular direction at a very good pace. So, process helps us a lot here. Creative thinking is brainstorming. Now, brainstorming is an activity of working together in a group, taking inputs of a group, and coming up with ideas and choices which are accepted and approved by, decided by the group. Critical thinking is introspective. It looks at the situation, what happened in the past, analyzes the situation, learns from the situation, and actually decides next steps. And that is critical thinking. Creative thinking helps in shift the paradigm. It shifts the paradigm. And critical thinking is about gradual shift. Critical thinking would decide to take steps one at a time, or the approach that is called as crawl, walk, run approach. So that is typical critical thinking approach. Creative thinking would give a totally different concept, a totally different idea, and the leap or the jump might be much bigger and longer sometimes. Creative thinking is very much open-minded. Critical thinking is section focused, it's conclusive. People would want to do things in a perfect manner, in a very, very good manner, and that is about critical thinking. So these are some of the qualities of critical and creative. Now let's look at the examples of paradigm shift in recent times so that we get an idea of what is a paradigm shift. The first and foremost example that I want to give you is about online shopping. In the past, when we used to go to shops and buy items from shops, we used to first take a look at the product and then decide if we want to buy it or not. Once the product is with us, we would pay for the product. That has totally changed with online shopping. First, we pay for the product. We take a look at the product. We take a look at the picture of the product. We don't look at the product directly. Whether we take a look at the picture of the product and decide whether this is the right product for us or not. We pay for the product and then the product is shipped to us. And this is a paradigm shift. If you remember, some of you might have remembered when this whole idea of online shopping started, many people thought that it's not going to work at all. And that is not true. Now, almost everybody wants to buy things online for various reasons. So, this is a paradigm shift. The concept of consumer is totally changed with this idea. The other example is taking loans. In the past, people used to consider that taking loan is not right or it's not a good habit. However, with credit cards, we don't even realize, we don't even know that when we swipe a credit card, we have already taken some credit or the micro loan. And we all are comfortable even with taking large loans. Many of us are comfortable. However, in the past, this was not an accepted principle. What was done was basically they changed the concept. They introduced few new terms like credit card, and we were all okay with the same idea and started taking loans, the micro loans, or swiping the credit cards. And you know that there are many people know that there are disadvantages of using credit cards. However, many of us are used to it and we just swipe the credit card at ease. We don't even realize that it has a commission that goes outside of our country. If we are using a authentication party like Visa or MasterCard, it's just natural to us. This is another paradigm shift. Then the third idea is of smartphones. In the past, the basic purpose of the phone, a telephone, was to call or to communicate over voice. And that idea has changed totally. We are using our smartphones as computers. We are using smartphones as camera. We are using smartphones as a wallet. We are using smartphones as an entertainment device. So in the past, if we would have told by somebody that there is a device which serves all these purposes, we wouldn't have imagined. I remember when the first time the mobile phone was launched in India, that time the cost of a call was, I think, 32 rupees per minute. And at that point of time, if somebody would have been asked uh, about the possibility of the telephone, the mobile phone being so popular, the person would have naturally said no. And at that point of time, if some of you remember, they used to get a small device like called a pager, and many people used to use that device for sending messages. So it was a messaging device, the electronic messaging device that people used to uh, keep with them, and that was just one sided, that was just one way. They only used to receive messages, they were not able to send messages at all. So that was about uh, the phones. Same is true with emails and mobile phones. Nowadays, our email and mobile numbers are being used as our identity. We don't want to change our email address, we don't want to change our phone number, because it is our identity. First thing we need to do when we buy a smartphone is log in with our email ID, and then the phone starts, because everything what we want to store is stored with our email address on in a cloud or at some other place than our phone. The most interesting and important scenario that we all are today is education through online meetings. Without the possibility of online meetings, it wouldn't have been possible for all of us to come together so quickly and have this type of a program. It was only possible because we have started thinking about online education through online meetings. I remember a few months ago, maybe a year ago, when I started taking programs on Zoom. Most of the people were not comfortable. They used to ask me what is Zoom, and they needed some help from my side to set up the Zoom. Today, when I speak about Zoom, most of the people are already aware of it. And that is exactly what is a paradigm shift that we are going through as far as education is concerned. 10 using your 10 fingers. Okay. Now, the question that I want to ask you is, can you think about ways to show numbers up to 99 using your fingers? Now, I change the question, and if you start thinking about it, some of the options that you had in the past probably wouldn't come to your mind. For example, no, or for example, yes, wouldn't come. What you would want to do is you want to tell how it is possible, or you would want to think about how it can be possible, or it can be it how we can make it possible. And that is exactly the power of creative thinking. The previous question was posed in such a way that we got answers which were more critical. No, yes, maybe. Now, when I ask the question differently, the question is, how can we do this? Naturally, either you would start thinking about how you can do it, or you would start wondering about what could be the possible ways to make it happen. And this is the power of how we look at a particular scenario, a particular situation. If you really observe, when we change the question, the approach changes. And that's exactly what is important when we think about any situation. Now let's quickly look at the solution so that you would know how simple and easy it is and how it can give us very high outcome. Now in this particular solution, we are going to consider our right hand as ones place and left hand as tens place, and our thumbs would be considered as 5. Okay, and our other fingers would be considered as 1. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Similarly, here we have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. So when I open and show all my fingers, it means 99. Now imagine just few minutes ago, these 10 fingers meant only 10, and now these 10 fingers mean 99. Now, when we look at this from industry's point of view, it's 10 times optimization, 10 times improvement. When we look at it from education point of view, few minutes ago, one student was able to only calculate up to 10 using these fingers. Now the same student can do addition and subtraction up to 99 using the same 10 fingers. So his life is simplified. If you really see the education, then probably up to numbers from 1 to 20 are taught in class 1 and numbers up to 100 are taught in class 2. With just this change, everything from 0 to 99 can be taught in the same step. And that is the efficiency that creative thinking can offer us. So I just showed you two examples. One is from a real life scenario where the kids created a canon, and this is a theoretical topic like mathematics where a thinking can change the outcome. We are going to look at real life example in the coming time. However, before that, let's understand the applications of creative and critical thinking. So creative thinking is effective in idea generation. Critical thinking, as we discussed, is effective in selection of an appropriate idea. Creative thinking helps us to develop a new concept, and critical thinking helps us in finding objectives. Once we develop a new concept, how can it be used, where it needs to be used, all these answers, the creative thinking would be more appropriate to the answers of all these questions. Creative thinking is very effective to develop a new point of view, and critical thinking is effective in evaluating points of views. Similarly, creative thinking is effective in influencing, and critical thinking is effective in impact analysis. So these are some of the applications of creative and critical thinking. Now I want to present an interesting case study here where I want to show you how creative thinking and critical thinking contributed and how we could solve or we solved a particular problem. Now, this case study is a real case study from a company who manufactures hardware. So they had hardware which is distributed across multiple sites, across multiple countries. They needed a specific hardware to reproduce specific customer issues. They had such hardware available at a particular site and may be available to certain people at that point of time. The exact physical location of the hardware at any site was unknown, and the hardware cannot be accessed without talking to the owner of the hardware. And the inventory owner may or may not be present when the customer faces an issue or the customer issue needs to be reproduced. Additionally, when during an annual inventory audit, hardware inventory audit, if the auditor asks for a particular item, then the company or the hardware owner was not able to produce that particular item to the auditor. So these are some of the specific challenges that we started finding alternatives and we started discussing about the alternatives. So naturally, when we started thinking about alternatives, people mentioned that the inventory owners need to be stricter. They need to follow the procedure. They need to follow the process really well. And it's right. However, when we spoke to the inventory owners, they said that all the people who use the hardware are our colleagues. So we are not in a capacity to force them to follow the process. And we suggest that the managers shall take ownership of the hardware and they shall help everyone in the team to follow the procedure. So see, when we look at this particular idea, sometimes it comes from the upbringing, critical thinking. We are thinking about how we think. Sometimes you might say that this comes from upbringing, or you might also think that this comes because of the way the person is, so from the genes. The next solution that came was inventory system. Build a software which maintains the inventory of all the hardware. So every time a new hardware comes, somebody needs to sit down and enter all the details about that hardware into the system. And every time when the hardware is transferred from one person to the other person, the system needs to be updated. Now the challenge is if people are in a hurry, and they are not interested in updating the system because their main job is not to update the system. Their main job is to reproduce a customer issue, reproduce a critical customer issue. So at that point of time, they pick a particular hardware and run to reproduce the issue. At a later point of time, naturally, it's not important to them, so they tend to forget. And this is the challenge with inventory system, a software. So the third solution that was introduced or suggested was tags, GPS tags, Wi-Fi tags, or RFID tags. And when we discussed and when we calculated the cost of these tags, it was not practical, and it was a huge amount that the company needed to invest on the tags, and the company or the team wasn't ready, the leadership wasn't ready to invest in these tags. So what do? There are other people in the same group, in the same team, and then they came up with a very different idea. What they mentioned is, let's consider the entire company as a data center and then start tracking the hardware in the company like the items are tracked in the data center. What they meant by that is every network port is monitored and every device is monitored all the time, 24/7. If if we do that, if we do that, then we don't need to look for a particular hardware at a particular point of time. And anytime when we want a particular hardware, we can search that particular hardware at any point of time and utilize it. So this is the idea that some of the team members suggested. Let's quickly look at the previous practice and the suggested practice. So the previous practice was visit the inventory store or the colleague's desk, pick up the device, assign it to yourself. When the device is with you, a colleague would visit to your desk and seek your permission to take the device. If you are not available at the desk, then he would just pick the device without your permission because whatever he wants to do is important and he is in a hurry. The new approach is much simpler. What it says is every network port is mapped to a particular desk location. So the location of every PC is known. The desk location is known. The site is known. Information of hardware attached to every PC is automatically stored in central repository. So run a small piece of software on every PC, and then what it would do is it would detect all the devices attached to that PC and update the central repository about the location and the hardware ID, about the make and all the details that are available about that particular device. And if you want a specific hardware, you can search it online, identify the site and the desk location. You can remotely access that site, that desk or that particular PC and run the tests that you want to run to see if you are able to quickly reproduce that issue or not. And let's see the advantages. Many of the things that we were discussing in the past automatically got eliminated with this particular solution. They all were able to quickly identify the hardware that they want. They were able to quickly remotely access that system. They were able to reproduce customer issues. They didn't need to maintain the inventory. So during the inventory audit, if the auditor wants to know where the hardware is, they can just search online and tell the exact desk location where that particular hardware is. This is almost a zero cost solution because you don't need any tags. You don't need to really build large software because it's just a small piece of software that was integrated with the existing system of inventory management. This is fully automated. So nobody needs to tell anybody that I am taking your device. If somebody pulls the device and takes it to his desk, automatically it gets updated into the inventory management system. So anyone can search and get to know about it. Zero process overhead and lot of flexibility. You don't need to go and make an entry in any register. You don't need to go and enter that device in any online system. It gets automatically updated. 100% up to date information. You don't need to do anything. You always get the latest 100% up to date information at any point of time in any time zone. Free movement of hardware. You can take any hardware, attach it, and people would know that you picked it from their desk and so on. Cross-site hardware utilization. In the past, they used to buy fixed set of hardware for every site. Now they know that the hardware can be shared, and because of that, they can buy different hardware for each site and it can be utilized. And this is very effective, especially when the time zones of the sites are extremely different. For example, India and US, where the time zones don't clash much, this is effective because Indian team can naturally access the hardware in the US when a US team isn't working. Improved hardware usage. Because of this, the utilization of hardware went up because it can be shared all the time. So these are some of the advantages of coming up with new approach or thinking about things differently or creatively thinking about a problem and coming up with a totally different and a new solution. Now with this, I want to make an appeal to you all. Let's go back to Mr. Joy Lobo. And because we all are in the field of education, this is really, really important for all of us. If we all think many a times because of various reasons, we think very, very critically about our students, and it's right and it's fine. However, if someone says that give me some sunshine, give me some rain, give me another chance because I want to grow up once again, please consider it. Please consider all the possibilities, alternatives to help him or her, because there is a possibility of paradigm shift there. The learning process shall be around creative thinking rather than critical thinking, because this is the only place where people can experiment. People can try various options. It may succeed or it may fail. However, if we force people into the critical thinking way during their education, then that is what they are also going to do afterwards. That is what they are going to do during their job. And that's why this is the best opportunity for all of us to also introduce creative thinking to all the students, and we all shall also practice it, because we are in the realm where it is possible to experiment. We are in the world where it's okay to make mistakes. We are in the world where we can change the world, we can shift the paradigm, because if we fail, then the impact is relatively lesser than in the industry. So this is the appeal that I have. And with this appeal, I want to thank you all for giving me this opportunity. I also want to thank the management of the institute for giving me the opportunity to present myself and the ideas that I had about creative and critical thinking. Netrutva Training and Consulting also conducts programs on for working professionals and also for kids uh, around critical and creative thinking. As like I told you, I have also authored books on various topics. So if you are interested in any one of those, feel free to reach out to me either on my email address or on my phone number, and I'll surely attend your call or surely respond to your email. So